Richard Skipper celebrates. Every show is a celebration. Each show, Richard delivers the artists you love, showcasing what makes them unique. Never gossipy. The antidote to a sometimes hectic world. Now, here's your host, Richard Skipper.
Happy St. Patrick's Day, everyone, and welcome to the latest edition of Richard Skipper Celebrates. This is the show in which I celebrate artists and their body of worth. Well, the luck of the Irish must be on my side tonight because I have Georg Dvorsky waiting in the wings. If I was to go through his resume right now, that would take up the full hour. I have been so fortunate to sit in the audience of so many shows. I saw him in the revival of Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, the Scarlet Pimpernel, Dames at Sea. But there's one particular performance that I want to talk about. It happened on my birthday 20 years ago at the John Houseman Theatre. February 11th, 2001, I went to see Pete and Keely starring Georg Dvorsky and Sally Mays. Well, they're bringing it back, and we're going to talk about that tonight. But their special guest star that evening was Phyllis Diller. Talk about an exciting evening at the theater. Well, I put together a little compilation celebrating not only George, but New York City and what we've been through recently. So take a look at this, and on the other side, I will introduce all of you to Georg Dvorsky.
Of course the car will start. My brand new DDR just fell apart. I mean, my boss will catch it on my pants. My wife announces she wants more romance. But nothing on catastrophe amaze me. Oh, mere cataclysm doesn't faze me. I'll get up tomorrow morning, take a deep breath, and go on.
Hey, hobo man, hey, dapper Dan, you've both got your style, but brother, you're never fully dressed without a smile. Your clothes may be both rummily, they stand out a mile, but brother, you're never fully dressed without a smile.
While quarantining in New York City in a ground-level apartment, you gotta be pretty creative if you really want to see NYC. What is it about you? You're big, you're loud, you're tough. NYC, I go years without you, then I can't get enough of cab drivers answering back in language far from pure, enough of Frankfurters answering back. Oh, brother, you know you're in NYC, too busy, too crazy, too hot, too cold, too late, got sold again on NYC. NYC, the shadows at sundown, the roofs that scrape the sky. NYC, the rich and the rundown, the big parade goes by. What other town has the Empire State and a mayor 5'2"? No other town in the whole 48 can half compare to you. Oh, NYC, you make them all postcards. Crowd, cram, you're still the champ. Amen for NYC. safe, everyone.
Hello, George, and welcome to our show. Before we begin,
Well, happy
I
St.
do want to
Patrick's
say,
Day.
well, happy St. Patrick's Day to you as well. Today does mark 370 days since our theaters have shut down. We are still in the midst of this pandemic. And before we begin, I just want to ask, how are you doing really in the midst of all this?
I'm doing well. I've been lucky because I've been busy, which is it's good in this past year. I mean, watching that NYC, I did that a year ago for the Mac-Haydn Theatre. They asked to keep their subscribers interested and have them feel like they're watching something at the theater. So we did some little videos to send out to the subscribers. I can't believe that was a year ago already.
I know, it's unbelievable. Well, I want to ask you, how have you kept busy during this time frame? And how has this last year impacted you beyond the obvious things that we know? What other life changes have come your way as a result of this?
Well, two huge ones. Because of this pandemic, I was able to sell my house in the Poconos. I've been trying to sell it for a while, and I couldn't do it because I never had the time to go out there and do it. Well, the pandemic allowed me time to go out there. And also, Rebecca Luker was one of my best friends.
Oh, I loved her.
So it gave me time to go help her and to get her, try to ease her through her illness. And unfortunately, she passed on December 23rd. So it gave a lot of us, we had what they called a care calendar, that we had scheduled people from 9 a.m. to 11 p.m. And when I sent it out to a friend of mine, they said, oh my goodness, this looks like the who's who of Broadway, because everyone had time to come. So we scheduled 2-hour periods for people to come and to sit with her and read to her and help her do her email. So that was the positive side of the pandemic. We were there to be with our friends and to help her out. The other side of it, it's just been tough. It's been tough not to be able to be on a stage again. I did a benefit last week, actually, for Federation up in Port Chester, New York. And it's weird to walk on a stage and be there with an empty audience. The musical director, Andy Einhorn, was probably 30 yards away over by the wing. And we got to walk in, take off our mask, sing the song, put the mask back on, and leave the theater. So it was just really, it's such a strange time.
Now, I'm hearing, and I'm sure you have as well, this idea that with Actors Equity, that they want to bring private drivers for each actor in the theater. In your own humble opinion, do you think that's a feasible way of coming back?
Actually, I do not. I don't think that's it's gonna depend upon the audience. The audience will make all the difference. I mean, they can't sell at half a house. They can't sell at 75%. A lot of these shows on Broadway run at 100% capacity. And if they can't do that, it makes it very difficult to run the show itself. And the backstage stuff can be worked out. The pit will be a problem. To have all those musicians in the pit until we're all vaccinated and this thing is contained, it's going to be quite an adventure.
Well, I want to go back to March 12th of last year. That's when all the theaters did shut down. And of course, it had a domino effect across the country. What did your calendar look like on March 11th of last year?
I had some things scheduled. Actually, Sally Mays and I, you mentioned Pete and Keely earlier. Sally Mays and I had done an evening at 54 Below on March 9th. Everything closed down, 4 days later? So it was kind of eerie that we called each other and thought, uh-oh, we were all crammed in that dressing room. What do we do now? And thank goodness neither of us got sick. But it's just eerie to think that a year ago we were performing and had things scheduled and had shows coming up for the summer, and everything just got canceled. So I remember sitting in my apartment for months on end thinking, well, I've cleaned it. I've cleaned my bathroom, I've scrubbed my kitchen. What do I do now? And that's when I started to go up and help Danny and Becca. So it got me out of the house. I went from my apartment to their apartment. And that was it.
How is Danny doing, by the way?
He's doing well. It's funny because, I've known him for 25 years. I knew Becca for 35, for 25. And people say to me, well, how's he doing? I say, he's taking it one day at a time. No, how's he really doing? And I say, he's grieving. His wife passed. He's grieving. He's not suicidal. And they said, was he talking to anyone? I said, yes, me. We talk every day. We talk for hours at a time. And he's just going through it's everyone grieves. Everyone has to grieve.
Absolutely.
He's not looking to do anything foolish or silly. He's going through his life without her. And it's tough. As you know, that first year, all the year of first is very difficult.
Absolutely. Now, I want to go back to your beginnings. I mean, you're from Greenburgh, Pennsylvania. What is that near? I'm not even familiar with where that is.
It's actually, I'm from Irwin, which is closer to Pittsburgh than Greensburg. I actually went to the high school in Greensburg. I was born in Greensburg, but I grew up in Irwin. It is 22 miles southeast of Pittsburgh. Before the Pennsylvania Turnpike was completed, it ended at Irwin, and that's how you got into Pittsburgh, by taking Route 30 down into Pittsburgh. So I grew up there. My family is all still there. I'm the only one that left home. I'm youngest to 5. Wow. I was not the black sheep, but I'm the one that I went to Carnegie Mellon University and thought, I want to make this work. So I went to New York, and here I am talking to you, Richard.
Where you are talking to me. The household that you grew up in, did you grow up in a household that was filled with the arts, or was the arts an exception in your household?
No, my father was in a barbershop quartet in the Army. He served in World War II. So he loved the arts. He was always singing and dancing. So we would go to Pirate games and Steeler games, and then the summer go to see something at Civic Light Opera, or he'd take us to see national tours that came through Pittsburgh. One of my favorite, I'll never forget this. I was 6 years old, and my dad came home and said, come on, we're going. And we all got in the car, and he drove us down to Pittsburgh to the Warner Theater to see the Sound of Music film. And we sat, it's one of those old movie theaters had balconies, and we sat in the balcony. And when Julie Andrews came up that hill, I feel like she was looking right at me. And that, rest is history, as they say. I just
was that the pivotal moment for you?
Yes, it actually was. My mom said, she said that I sang before I spoke. And it's interesting to see President Biden, because I stuttered as a child. So I think singing actually helped me slow down my speech enough that, and I remember doing that whole thing, but I got over it. I sang a lot. I was going to be a veterinarian. I was all set to go to University of Pennsylvania for pre-med, and I got this mental block to sing. And it's ironic because my father died when I was in 9th grade, and I was playing football up till that point. Thank you. I was playing football up to that point, and I broke my arm after our first game. We had to have hitting drills, and they had the 2 biggest guys that had the last hit of the day. Well, I was almost 6 foot tall at that point and 200 pounds. And Bob Knisner hit me, and I hit the ground. I went to push up, and my arm snapped, and it looked like a Z. And I had to run into the locker room. They had to cut my pads off of me. I needed something to do while my arm was healing, so I joined the choir. And the night I got a solo in the Christmas cantata, and my family was going to come. And that's the night my dad went into the hospital. So my sister Karen came with one of those old tape recorders, taped my solo, and we were taking it down to the hospital the next day to play it for my father. And he passed before we got there.
Wow.
So he never heard me sing. And it's just so weird because my life kind of went, and I stopped playing sports. I did the plays. I did musicals. My mother fought with me my entire senior year because I dropped advanced biology to take music theory. And I said, I don't want to be 80 years old and say, I wish I would have. I want to do this while I can. And my brother was going to Carnegie Mellon as an accounting major. And John Dossett was on his floor. It wasn't his room, it was on his floor. Mm-hmm. And Michael had told John about me. He said, have George come down for a college day. So I went to Carnegie Mellon, and John showed me around the campus, and I auditioned, and I got in. There were 10 of us in my class.
And did the fighting stop with your mom at that moment?
No, it did not. That summer, yeah. We were told we should all audition for the Pittsburgh Civic-Led Opera Ensemble that year. Well, usually they bring everyone back, and those were the days where they had 12 singers and 12 dancers in their ensembles. Mm-hmm. So I auditioned for one of the singers, and everyone was returning from the previous year. I didn't think I had a snowball's chance in hell to get it. And my final callback was the day of a big snowstorm in Pittsburgh. So I went down early in the morning. I got kept through the end. At 6 o'clock, they said, yes, you're in the ensemble. I didn't run to a payphone. There were no cell phones back in 1904. So I just jumped in the car to drive back home in a snowstorm. And my mother was worried sick because she thought I didn't get it. And I was too upset and wrecked in a snowstorm. But when I walked in, she hugged me, said, you're following in your father's dreams. And that really hit me. And from then on, I've been very fortunate, knock wood, thank God, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm. So you're doing theater in Pittsburgh, but when did the decision happen for you to come to New York?
When I was at Pittsburgh Civic-Led Opera, I met Arlene Caruso, who was Hal Prince's secretary. And she had told me about a revival of West Side Story they were going to do back in 1978. So I went to New York to audition for it. That whole production, that part of it fell through. They did it again like a year later, but that I was nixed out. And I got a job doing a dinner theater tour of Fiddler on the Roof. So I stayed in the business I was going to go back to CMU, and that professor said, you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. So I stayed, and I don't regret it. I mean, I loved going to school, but I learned more in 6 weeks in New York City than I learned that whole time at CMU. Sorry, guys, but
now
on-the-job training really makes it work.
I'm going to ask the question that's going to cause so many actors to hate you for a moment. Did you ever do any other survival jobs, or were you always working in the theater?
There was one time, actually, I got to New York, had this audition. I thought I better get a job. So I was living up on Columbus Avenue and 71st Street, and they opened a Haagen-Dazs on 74th in Columbus. So I walked in. They hired me as an assistant manager, which I thought, I've never done this before. So I trained for one day, and the next day I got that Fiddler on the Roof tour. So I was going to be a scoop,
thank God,
an assistant manager at a scoop store, and never had to do it. And then there was about a 6-week period when I went from doing the ensemble stuff to getting roles on Broadway. I had a couple months where I wasn't working, and I got nervous again. So a friend of mine was working at was it the Library Restaurant? It was up on 93rd. Do you remember that? The old library?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, I do remember.
They needed a cashier, so I filled in as a cashier. And every night I had to cash out and balance the books. Well, the manager called me, and the owner said, would you do this full time? Because our books are always great with you. I said, no, I'm not doing it full time. I was filling in for a friend, and that's the only other job I had. I've been so fortunate to work in the theater doing concert work. You know, I've just been very lucky.
Well, I want to ask you, at that time when you first came to New York, how did you find your first apartment in New York? Did you have roommates? What was that experience like for you, for a young man who's just starting out in New York City?
I did. At the apartment I live in now, there were 4 of us living in it. I don't know how. I mean, I look at this now and I go, how could 4 people be in here? But it's hilarious. Kim Criswell, who now lives in London, she and I moved to New York together. And we were roommates. She got the Annie tour. I got the Whorehouse tour about weeks apart. So we both left to go on the road. So our other roommates brought other people in. I'm still in the same apartment 40 years later. I still run into people that say, "Are you still living on that place?" And I say, "Yes, I am." They say, "Because I stayed there for a couple of days. I had roommates I didn't even know about." But because of, backstage was the big thing, and the theater was so different back then. We had to go sign up. In fact, I was telling Danny this the other day. When I auditioned for Whorehouse, we had to go and sign up. There was just a sign up on the stage door. Put your name on, come back at 10 o'clock. I was number 51 on the list. And within the first, they used to type out at that point. You'd stand on stage and say, you. And by the second cut, I was down to I was the first one. They cut 50 guys before me. Because you had to be over 6 feet tall. You had to look a little brawny,
like an Aggie
football player. So, yes. And I did that. I did that tour for 9 months, came into the Broadway company and closed the Broadway company. And that's the one, if you remember this, we then went to Boston and came back to Eugene O'Neill because of the contracts that were, and we came back to Eugene O'Neill and closed there. And then I got my first role, and I've been doing that since.
That's great. Well, I want to ask you, who are some of the pivotal people along the way that have made the biggest impact, not only on your career, but on your life in general?
My family has been so supportive. I would give them a lot of credit because they always, in fact, when you asked about my mom, if she fought with me, when I did Marilyn and American Fable, and my family came to the opening night and saw my name on the poster, my mom really thought, well, wow, he's doing what he wanted to do. And then, because I would, up till that point, she'd write me letters and say, come back home and go back to school and get a degree in something you can use. And you can work at Sears and sell paint until you get your degree. And I did that one summer. So then after she saw my name on a poster and realized I was making a career working on Broadway, if I would write home and say I'm depressed, she'd say, no, you got to keep plugging it, keep going. So it's funny how that turned almost 180 degrees. And my family's always been very supportive. Like I said, I'm youngest of 5. I've got 19 or 20 great nieces and nephews, 12 nieces and nephews. Someone from my family has seen every show I've done. So it's fun to know that I've got someone from my family coming to be that supportive. And then it's funny because when I was in high school, and I think she might be watching right now, Maureen Moore, she was at Carnegie Mellon. I went to see this Pittsburgh City Opera season my senior year into going to CMU, and she was a resident actress there. And she walked on stage, couldn't take my eyes off of her, and I just remembered her. And then in 1984, I did Kicks, Alan Menken's workshop of Kicks that Ian wrote and directed, and Maureen was in it, and I was so nervous because I thought, oh my God, this is Maureen Moore. So I sat and got to know her, and then I started using her as a coach. She coached me on Pimpernel. She's coached me on some really. She's such a brilliant actress, a great singer. She's a dear friend of mine. She and my friend Colleen, you better be watching. Hi, Shorty. But Maureen is very instrumental. She did it. She knows me well, and she knows how to get me to do things and I trust her. I trust her implicitly. So she's been a godsend to me. And people, it was funny when I went to see War Paint.
Yes,
I was sitting there watching my friends going. Everyone I know on that stage was somehow a pivotal part in my career. I mean, Patti LuPone, I worked with her at Lincoln Center and just fell in love with her. And she's just so dear. And she walked by my dressing room and said, I love you, Georgie. I said, love you, Patty Ann. And I just loved working with her. And Joanna Glushak and Douglas Sills. I covered Douglas Sills in Pimpernel. And in fact, Maureen Moore coached me because I was hired to stand by for Douglas a week before they went into the Minskoff for Tech. So, and I was told there was an internal cover, and there was not. So after the first week of previews, Douglas needed a rest, and I had to go on that second Tuesday night. And thank God I'd hired Maureen to coach me through the script. The Friday before, she and I had finished going through page by page, just so if I had to go on, I wouldn't fall flat on my face. Because all I had was 1 hour of rehearsal with the assistant musical director to learn my music. That was it. So I had to watch from then on, and I had to go on that stage and carry a $10 million musical on my shoulders. I'd never been on the stage. Instead of a put-in rehearsal, I learned the sword fight, an abbreviated version of the sword fight. So I remember I had to walk out, and my first line was to Christine Andreas and say, Marguerite St. Just, and put my hand out. And I thought, why is my hand not shaking? Because I just kept turning the page in my head and hearing Maureen say, do this, do this. So she got me through it.
What do you remember from that night? Walking out on that stage for the first time, as you say, carrying this huge production on your shoulders, but you were prepared. Thank you, Maureen. So.
Yes, I was. But I'll never forget when the curtain came down. I was on for 3 shows. Tuesday night, because my adrenaline was pumping so much, and I was just relying on turning the page in my head of that script, and got through it. At the curtain call, I felt this huge hug, and it was Peter Hunt gave me a bear hug, and he said, I don't know how the hell you did that. And I walked in the dressing room and fell on the floor and laid on the floor in fetal position and cried for about 10 minutes.
I was going to ask if you were able to really enjoy that moment of being on stage, or were all these other things going through your head at that time? Were you truly, there? I mean, obviously you've got the training and that was there, but were you able to enjoy yourself that evening?
I tried to remain present and stay in the moment and do, like Maureen coached me well. Christina Andreas, who is an angel, she actually asked to run our scenes before half hour, which I went in early and did that. So, I had a lot of people pulling for me, and it felt great. But it was, I just remember thinking, why aren't I shaking? But I had so much other stuff to worry about. Now, the Wednesday shows, I did both shows Wednesday. They got a little sloppy because I started to relax. But that Tuesday night, I'll never forget that Tuesday night.
Now, George, I'm all about celebrating. So I'm going to ask you a question, and I don't want any names mentioned or an exact situation. But was there a moment in your career that was very difficult for you to get through? And if so, how did you get through that moment?
I started therapy back in 1992, and I was doing a show that was very depressing. And I remember thinking, how am I going to get through this? And my therapist said, just be there. Do your work, go to the theater, do your work. Don't take it home with you. And that was great advice, because a lot of times you think, and that's one thing you learn. Theater can be so cathartic. You can leave everything that you're feeling on that stage and walk out the door, not have to take it home with you. So that was great advice. Just be on that stage, and when you leave it there.
Because it is so ingrained in your body, as doing this for so many years. Have you been able to just relax now? Obviously, all of us want to get back to work. But where you are right now, are you able to just be in the moment, or has the therapy really helped you with that?
Both, actually. It's a little bit of both. Doing Pete and Keely, which I know we're going to talk about, but it had been 20 years. And after sitting in your apartment for a few months and then trying to get back into shape somewhat without going to a gym, that has been a challenge. And, also being 20 years older, but that was a big old challenge to get through. But it's, you have to have that mental state to just sit and do and be and trust. Trusting is a huge part of this business. So just trust that it's in you and you can get through it.
No, we are another. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Can I say one more?
Yes,
I had one more. Chita Rivera. Chita Rivera changed my life. Working with Chita, to see that caliber of star and know that they don't make them like that anymore, and she's a legend, and she was one of us. She's one of my dearest friends now, and it's just so. I think when I was in Whorehouse, do you remember it was called Curtain Up on 43rd.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes, of course. It was a hangout.
Yes, correct. They had all the names on the wall. My name was there. And I took my family there one night after Whorehouse, and Chita was in the restaurant. And when we worked together 20 years later, I said, you will never remember this, but you were at that restaurant. And I walked over and asked if I could have she was sitting with Rip Taylor. I'll never forget it. And I asked if I could have their autograph. And they both were just so terrific. And I told her later, I said, I know you don't remember this. And she's an angel. So.
Well, that brings us to my next clip. I've got you and Chita together, and then we'll talk on the other side of this, because the perfect segue. Thank you.
Sure.
Some English guy, an Earl or something.
Billy, where's the old Crocker confidence? You think some teabag can compete with you? You think he's got one tiny fraction of your brains, your looks, your... At words poetic, I'm so pathetic that I always have found it best, instead of getting him off my chest, to let him rest. Unexpressed, I hate parading my serenading, as I'll probably miss a bar. But if this ditty is not so pretty, at least it'll tell you how great you are. You're the top. You're the Coliseum. You're the top. You're the Louvre Museum. You're a melody from a symphony by Strauss. You're a Bendel bonnet, a Shakespeare sonnet. You're Mickey Mouse. You're the Nile. You're the Tower of Pisa. You're the smile on the Mona Lisa. I'm a worthless check, a total wreck, a flop. But if, baby, I'm the bottom, you're the top.
You know, your words poetic are not pathetic. On the other hand, babe, you shine. And I can feel after every line a thrill divine down my spine. Now gifted humans like Vincent Humans might think that your song is bad, but I got a notion, I'll second the motion, and this is what I'm going to add. You're the top.
I am.
You're Mahatma Gandhi. You're the top. You're Napoleon Brandy. You're the purple light of a summer night in Spain. You're the National Gallery. Your garbo salary. Your cellophane. You're sublime. You're a turkey dinner. You're the time of the Derby winner. I'm a toy balloon that's fated soon to pop. No. But if, baby, on the bottom, you're the top.
You're the top. You're an arrow collar. You're the top. You're a Coolidge dollar. You're the nimble tread on the feet of Fred Astaire.
That's me.
You're an old Neil drama.
You're Whistler's mama.
You're Camembert.
You're a rose. You're Inferno's Dante.
You're the nose on the great Durante. I'm just in the way, as the French would say, the trump. But if, baby, I'm the bottom, you're the top. Yes.
Top. No. You're a dancing valley. You're the top. You're a hot tamale. You're an angel, you, something too divine. You're a Botticelli. You're Keats.
You're Shelley.
You're Ovaltine.
Yeah.
You're a boon. You're the dam at Boulder. You're the moon over Mae West's shoulder. I'm a nominee of the GOP.
Or GOP.
But if, baby, I'm the bottom, you're the top.
No. You're the top. You're a Waldorf salad.
You're the top.
Yeah.
You're a Berlin ballad.
You're the boats that glide on the sleepy side sea.
You're an old Dutch master. You're Lady Astor.
You're broccoli. You're romance. You're the steps of Russia. You're the pants on a Roxy Usher. I'm a broken doll.
A phone-roll, a block.
But baby, I'm the bottom. You're the top.
I was lucky enough to see that production 3 times, directed by. I'm sorry?
I didn't know you saw it 3 times.
Yeah, I saw it 3 times, directed by our dear friend Leroy Reams. And of course, this was at the Paper Mill Playhouse, and I had that queued up. You took us to Chita, and I, of course, appreciate your bringing her up because she's just the best. She is the top. But I want to ask you, I love the Paper Mill Playhouse. What is it about the Paper Mill Playhouse that resonates so much with you?
It's such a family atmosphere. I started working there in 1987 was my first show. I had done my one and only there. And then they asked me to do, I went from my one and only to 1776 to Shenandoah to Jesus Christ Superstar. So I did, they usually didn't want to cast anyone in the same season, but I did 2 seasons, 2 shows in a row. So it was such a family atmosphere back then. I just loved going, and it's so close to the city. It's a gorgeous theater, top-notch production. The Michael and Nia used to do those sets, and they were absolutely stunning. It was just a great place to work, and I made a lot of long-lasting friends there. And then when I went back to do Anything Goes with Chita, I was so honored to finally work with her, but even more honored to go back to Paper Mill because it was like a home away from home for me. So it was just so wonderful. And Bruce Adler, may he rest in peace, he was our moon face. And the 3 of us, we were so irreverent, Richard. I'm surprised we didn't get in trouble because Chita would laugh right along with us. At the end of the show, when we were the 2 Chinese guys, she would come by and tap our cheeks. Well, she kept hitting us harder. So Bruce said, let's put chiclets in our mouth. And she hit, and we spit chiclets into our hand. I thought she was going to, well, she laughed a lot, but we made it for it.
Now, I want to
it
talk.
was just such a great time.
Pete and Keely, as I said in my introduction, and I remember the night, February 11th, 2001. Phyllis Diller was your guest star in the show, and I was there. I had always wanted to see her, and with all reference to you, I wanted to see her in the production, so I waited until she came into it, and she was sharp as a tack. The one-liners were coming one after the other. But that production, Pete and Keely, how did it first of all come about? And here's a photograph of you, and I am in love with Sally Mays. And as a matter of fact, Sally Mays is going to be in your little box there on Friday afternoon at 2 o'clock. We're going to be talking about the show. But you two have such a chemistry on stage. And it's almost like, you're living out this story by bringing it back every few years and doing it again. What is it about this show that, beyond the obvious, you love each other so much, the fun of playing these characters?
We are Pete and Keely after 20 years. Okay, Pete and Keely, Jim Hyman had written it for himself and Anne Brown. So that was the first. They were trying to do some readings and get some interest in it. Then they wanted Sally, and I knew who Sally was, but had never worked with her, nor I hadn't even met her. And I was doing Leading Men Don't Dance at Rainbow and Stars at the time, and Mark Waldrop had written the original. He wrote the lyrics for our opening number, Leading Men Don't Dance. While we were recording it, he was there and came up to me and said, "There's a project I'm working on I think you might be right for." So I went to Patrick Brady's apartment. Sally was there, and we sang I don't remember what the song was, but she and I looked at each other and thought, uh-oh, because we just blended so beautifully, and we've been close, dear friends. I mean, sometimes we want to smack each other, but we love each other. In the past 21 years, we've just gotten to be so close. In fact, I talked to her today before I did this, and I said, I'll be watching you on Friday. But she and I, it just really clicked. And so we worked on it for 4 years, doing backers auditions and readings. In fact, the first reading we did at Triad was 3 hours long. We had an international medley after the cross country tour. And so we kept paring it down and paring it down and paring it down. And we were lucky when we finally brought the show into the John Houseman, because she and I had done so many presentations of it on book. We learned a lot of it by osmosis. Anyone who is cast to do that show, I wouldn't envy them to have to learn that in 2 weeks, because it is a bear, especially that cross country medley. But she and I, we did that original show. And go ahead.
No, go ahead.
We opened in December of 2000. That was a problem, because opening December 14th is not a great time of year. So we opened the show, and during previews, people came to see it and said, this is going to be the sleeper hit of the season. This is just going to skyrocket the two of you. And I didn't want to believe it. I was hopeful, but I didn't want to get cocky about it. And then we opened, and the box office went, it didn't go up, it didn't go down. So we kind of struggled through January, and then the producers came to us and said they had this idea to bring in special guests. 1 week, Phyllis Diller. The second week would be Joanne Worley. The third and fourth week would be Charo. As wonderful as those three women were, it worked the best with Phyllis, because we had a point in the show where there was a commercial in the first act. So we cut that commercial and introduced the special guest then, and they did 5 minutes of their 1968 act. And then at the top of Act 2, they came on and did 10 minutes. Phyllis was just, because she did her act from 1968, and she was hilarious and so fun backstage, in her 68 costume. Joanne was funny. And then Charo, we loved her, but she is a brilliant flamenco guitarist, and she brought a sound system with her. So we introduced her, and she had this, I have a friend. She had a sound system. So we had a sound system that was so loud, and like the wall of sound, almost like Motown. And then we came on with our little trio, and it just didn't work as well. And they thought they'd bring in more people than they did, and we closed because our special guests were too expensive. And then last year, or in 2019, we did a Birdland gig that sold out all three shows, and buzz was happening again. So when Paper Mill asked us to do this, we were just thrilled to do it, to do a full, because Birdland, of course, we stood there and just sung it. But at Paper Mill, we're back in our costumes and doing a full production.
Well, for those who don't know, Pete and Keely are very much like a Steve and Edie couple who were married and separated, and they've come back together for this television special. And so what was really wonderful about the show is not only do you see the actual filming, but you see the stuff that's going on behind the scenes as well. Truly one of the great nights that I've had in the theater. But now, with this new medium, we're forced to do it this way. I know that from what I've read, that this was on the calendar for one of the productions for their next season. Am I correct? Or did this come about?
It was not.
Oh, it wasn't.
This came about because of the pandemic. As far as I know, it wasn't. It's because of the pandemic. They had to redo everything. So they're trying to find small shows that they could film for their subscribers. And that's what I may be wrong. Ooh, I should have done my research.
Well, one of the articles that I read said that it was in the season, and then you went this direction. But they could have been wrong. I could be wrong. It happens. What did that do for you as far as the protocols of COVID and everything in terms of working on this show? How did the process take place?
Sally and I had to move out there. Paper Mill has a house across the street with 2 apartments in it. We had to move out there and be in our own quote unquote bubble. We were tested every 3 days. We wore I should have brought it up. It's downstairs. It's a singer. Have you seen these singer masks? They look like duck bills. They're these big, they have a big, look like a bill. So you can really sing in it. They're a little confining, but we got through it. Every day rehearsal, we had to wear them for rehearsal. Everyone in the rehearsal space had to have masks on. We had what we called the COVID Nazi there, watching everything we did, made sure that we didn't jeopardize anyone. When we got into the theater and teched it, we wore our masks for all the staging. And then when we ran it, the assistant stage managers came out. We put our masks in a basket, and then we ran it without the mask because she and I spent so much time together. And like I said, we were tested every 3 days. So we were both negative, thank God. We didn't really go. We went to the grocery store, then came home and cooked and sat and watched TV. We weren't in rehearsal. So we really were confined to that house. And it was just it was 2 weeks out there, and we rehearsed for, I believe, 10 days, teched for 3. And then the nor'easter hit. So we had 2 days of nothing. We sat in the house and watched it snow because there was so much snow in Melbourne, we couldn't do anything. So she and I just sat and watched the snow.
It's you are becoming Pete and Keely. You're together 24/7. George, there was a time in theater where, during the 50s and 60s, and I think of shows like I Do, that were two-handers. Do you think that those type of productions will come back? I mean, because theater has gotten so big and in some cases so unwieldy that it's virtually impossible, you mentioned earlier, for a show to succeed if it's not at capacity. Do you think that type of theater will come back?
I do. I think smaller productions are what will happen for quite a while, especially regionally. It's just gotten so expensive to do these huge shows that I think they'll do some smaller productions. So I think they'll come back, which I would love to do. I do. One of my favorite jokes is they asked Mary Martin if she ever has vocal problems, and she said, "When I do, I do, I do, I do."
Do you know the story about Mary Martin standing in Legends?
Yes. So I want to do that show so I can tell that joke. Yes.
Well, I hope that you get a chance to do that. So the show is going to start streaming when?
April 17th. And right now you have to be a subscriber to see it. They did a New Year's Eve concert, a show called Some Enchanted Evening, which is a big Rodgers and Hammerstein review, Pete and Keely and Beehive, and it's part of their subscription package. But I know people are calling the box office and asking if they can see it another way, and I think they're trying to work something out. Hoping. No. But that's the way to see it. Call the Paper Mill box office and ask.
And I'm going to ask you a question that you definitely don't have the answer for, but this is all on speculation. How do you see the theater coming back? The big picture, it will come back. It's all the steps to bring it back to its full capacity will be interesting to watch. I think it's going to be different than what we knew. I think this past year has taught us a lot of things that will make it different. So it's going to be interesting to watch it unfold because the vaccine is going to make a huge difference. That will be the biggest difference. And I think. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I just think the vaccine will help people. I got mine, actually. Got my first one on Wednesday. It'll help people just feel assured to be, because who would want to sit next to someone coughing and gagging at this point? So it's just going to take some time.
I've got this image in the theater where the announcement is made before the show starts, please keep your mask on. And then just like the cell phone situation in the theaters, someone's going to take their mask off and there's going to be, a fight in the aisle. I just hope that we find a way of making it work.
I too. I really hope so too.
And now
I think it will. Good.
Okay. In the past 20 years, how has Pete changed and how has George changed?
I don't know if I can say that. Mark Waldrop, our director for Pete and Keely,
who I love.
I had done it. He's just, he's great. I'll change the word, but you'll get the idea. We did a Gershwin concert at 54 Below, and he came up to me and says, "George, you're doing something totally different." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "No, it's great, but you have this I don't give a F attitude now, and it really makes it endearing to watch you perform now." And I thought, I think that's just age. It's age. And, I've been in this business for 42 years. You actually it's not jaded, but you just learn to go with the flow and, nothing. And after doing the Scarlet Pimpernel and walking out on that stage and carrying a $10 million musical on my shoulders I thought, short of walking out of the theater and getting hit by a bus, I wasn't afraid to do anything. And the more you perform, I think you just go, who cares? Just do it. Just let it. If something happens, you keep moving on. And I think a life in the theater teaches you to just go with it, and you just relax more and more, and it just becomes easier, actually.
Well, there have been a lot of changes in the theater since you first began. What are some of the changes that you've embraced, and what are some that you still resist, and what are some that you miss?
I miss. It's become a bit of a spectacle corporate feel that I miss those. We always had a family in the theater. Every show was your family. In fact, I was lucky because when I did my first 2 shows were tours. So when you're on the road, your only responsibility is to get to that theater and sign in at 7:00. So you're with the same people all day, every day, and you do things and visit cities and learn about them. When I got to the Broadway show, the show came down, everybody went home. I was like, whoa, where's everybody going? So that whole family thing I missed. So I like that. There's just such a family in the theater that I miss, especially this year, without being able to touch someone. But the thing that drives me the craziest is now social media, and they ask you how many followers you have. And it's like, well, I think after 40 years, people know me enough that they'd come sit without having a follower. But yeah, I know people who didn't get jobs because they didn't have enough followers. I don't want that to be me.
Wow.
Yeah, it's weird.
And what's next for you?
I actually did something last Wednesday that I'm really excited about. My dearest friend, Jean Becker, was President Bush 41's chief of staff, and he passed away 2 years ago. Now, she wrote a book called The Man I Knew, and it's being released on June 1st. And she had her marketing meeting with her publisher, and they were talking about the audiobook, and she said, I don't want to read it, but I used to, when I go to Maine in the summers, if I'd work in a Gunkwit or just go to Kennebunkport and spend time with my friends, Bonnie and Helen, I would go over and read to President Bush. And Gene said I was one of his favorite readers. So she suggested to the publisher that one of President Bush's favorite readers, maybe I could come in and audition. And they sent me 4 letters, and Danny and I recorded them he had a little studio in his apartment. I went up and recorded them, sent them in, and I went in and recorded 101 pages of letters last Wednesday that will be in the audiobook, The Man I Knew, coming out June 1st.
That's amazing.
I did my first audiobook.
That's great. And anything I can do to get the word out about that, call on me. I'll be there for you.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. And I just got cast in a short film yesterday. So as I said, things are happening. Yeah, theater's not, but I mean, other things I've been keeping busy, thank goodness. So I shoot that April 24th and 25th.
Well, George, I mean, this has been, we're at the end of our show, but I want to thank you so much. As I said at the beginning, it's been an hour. Yes. And I'm not just saying, no, you're perfect. And I'm not just saying this because I'm sitting here talking to you. I have had so many pleasurable evenings in the theater, seeing you on stage. I'm a huge fan of your work, so this was a great honor. And when I heard about Pete and Keely, I reached out and I wanted to have you and Sally together. And you got back to me right away. Sally got back to me a few days later. I had already booked you. I thought, well, I'll do it this way. We'll keep Pete and Keely separate.
We're Pete and Keely, Rich. I'm telling you, we are Pete and Keely. Just wait. I want green.
Yes, and I will let everyone know that Sally Mays will be here on Friday afternoon at 1:00. And I just can't wait to sit down and celebrate her. She's truly one of my favorite people in the business, as are you. I want to thank everyone for being here tonight. If you enjoyed the show, and I hope you did, please leave a comment on the YouTube channel. That really helps to boost this video so that other people will see it. And some of you will be listening to this on a podcast, wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Leave a comment there as well. That helps moving forward. I also end every show by telling everyone to go out and do something nice for somebody else without expecting anything in return. Go to your Facebook friends list. I know that you can't do this right now, George. But go to your Facebook. I hope that works out for you, by the way.
I was hacked.
You were hacked. Go to your Facebook friends list. Reach out to the 8th person on your list. Pick up the phone and call them and let them know what they mean to you. Not a text message, not an email, not an inbox message, but an actual phone call. As our dear friend David Friedman says, we're all in this together, but we're not in the same boat. And you never know what someone else is going through. Reach out. Now, George, I'm going to give you the final word. Anything that you want to expound upon that we talked about tonight, anything that we didn't talk about that you wish we had, or just any message that you want to put out to everyone who's watching right now. And again, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much. Your closing statement, just pay it forward. Do something kind for someone. It will come back to you. I swear it always does. Just keep paying it forward. Be kind. Just be kind. When I die, I wanted to say, here lies George Dvorsky. He was kind. So just kindness. We need kindness in this world. So people, be out there and be kind. That's what I will leave you with.
Have a great night and happy St. Paddy's Day.
Thanks so much, Richard. This was a blast. Thank you.
Thank you so much.